Thank you for coming to our fifth lecture in the Anger Management Communications Solutions lecture series, Anger Management Communication 3D. This lecture was planned many weeks ago, but the events of the past the past week or so has been very instructive to our program, Civil Groups program, looking at how anger loss is and the social consequences of those events. Now, again, the lecture is going to be Anger Management Communication 3D, Language, Mindfulness, and Recovery. So, the events in Dallas, Baton Rouge, Falcon Heights of July of this year is very instructive. I think Attorney General Lynch stated best. She said that we have problems with communications. That was from a July 12th hearing that the Congress convened to look at Hillary's email stuff. But it was wonderful theater. The only theater you can do in America, man. It was just wonderful. The Republicans wanted to talk about Hillary's email and trying to put together some new charging device against her, and of course the Democrats began to focus on all of the gun violence in America, starting what happened in Florida about a month ago, and went on to talk about what happened in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and also what happened in Falcon Heights. But of course the Republicans simply wanted to talk about a new charging article against Hillary. And the Democrats were masterful. But, you know, as Obama said, you know, democracy is messy, and it is what it is. But one of the things that is important here is that so basically, what happens is that I'm going to go ahead and maybe we can put it together, but that's okay. Go ahead. Language is very important. Language is very important. Language is important for managing loss, for recovery, for everything. Language is important for establishing intimate spaces with each other, and that becomes very important as you live your life and you manage people and situations in your life. The lecture is not. This was a different lecture, number 5. This was on the loss and grief lecture. I think the one we're looking for is the mindfulness lecture. In any event, we moved on. So one of the things I talked about in terms of formulating device, as you recommended, Don, is to pose some questions and also to talk about a word cloud and how does that manage. So this is a different lecture. This is on bargaining.
I already opened the right one, but it's lagging so bad.
Mm-hmm.
It always does that. I don't know if it's related to the Wi-Fi. Maybe that's the only thing I can think of.
It could be that it's just a file. But you can see we've been doing a lot of work here, and it's for our book that we want to.
I'm displaying the right input, but the thing is lagging and it's not constantly refresh.
Yeah. See, that's why we need Francisco here, man. Yes, that's okay. We can continue talking. Now, one of the important things is that we talked about the questions that I posed. One of the questions I posed was the first question I posed in my lecture notes was. Have you ever been in a situation where you're talking to somebody and you realize that that person is just not making sense to you?
All the time.
And it's a very common experience that we have. Speaking to somebody, you don't know what they're talking about. And I wanted to know, how does that make you feel? And I've been going back and forth with this. I've been trying to name it because I've encountered it very often.
I suggest that what you're looking for is at the bottom of that lecture is today's lecture.
It's a compilation. You have to
Keep going down. The lecture you had, lecture 5.
Mm-hmm.
Keep going down. You'll see it gets to language, mindfulness, and solutions.
Yeah, issue number 1 here is that the information is not even being built through that thing, even though the computer keeps on saying it's connected to it.
Is it through Wi-Fi? Would it be better?
I think it's Wi-Fi.
Go back to the.
Would it be better if you hook up it directly in the future?
There's a little port right here, and I'm thinking that's what
In the future, maybe we should just hook it up because basically,
we're having this issue all the time.
yeah. So basically, just to forget about Wi-Fi, just hook it up directly. So how do I do this? Go back. So basically, communication solution, managing loss. So basically, we talked about this information here. Now, this for me is a very exciting lecture because it kind of ties in with a number of things. It ties in with the idea that language is very important to manage loss and grief. We talked about we were talking about putting together a lecture for, we call it the Edinburgh Lectures. In 2017, we plan to do that. And you know, it's exciting work for me because David Hume is one of those wonderful people that I simply love. You know, he was described as an empiricist, and he's also described as a skeptic. And it's very interesting that when I've been doing my research and reading on him, he started out his life, at some point in his life, his evolving consciousness structure, he was once a Stoic. And then he gave up Stoicism for being a skeptic. He was an atheist, so he never got onto the unhappy consciousness or the rational choice in terms of your conscious understanding. In any event, this gets very, very deep in the wood, guys. So I've been told that, you know, sometimes I get too off base and I become silly, and I'm going to try not to do that today. One of the things that we talked about is we talked about the 7 levels of conscious development. It starts out in childhood through mastery, where you begin to establish your identity by playing and destroying things. You play with objects, you destroy objects. And there's implicit in that mastery, your identity begins to emerge. And part of that is the aesthetics and the choices that you make around playing and your identity. It goes on to power unto death, where you begin to experience in fantasy and play prosecutorial anxiety. Now, prosecutorial anxiety is from Melanie Klein, and this formulation combines 3 things. It combines the work of Hegel, who talks about the emerging consciousness, 7 levels of that, and it's also, I add Melanie Klein's work to that, and I attached it to power unto death, where I said power unto death creates prosecutorial anxiety, not only for those who are practicing it, but it comes back at you. And that forces you on to a 3rd level of conscious development, which is the master-slave relationship, which you begin to encounter depressive anxiety, preferably to the prosecutorial anxiety. You establish relationships, and it's those relationships that help you to survive. Now, the truth of the matter is an unfortunate framing, master-slave, but you know, we all have master-slave relationships. You know, God, the one that I think about often is my relationship with God. There are a lot of things that I do as a human being that is completely facilitated by my understanding of my relationship to God or my relationship to my Father. You know, it becomes very important. I got to be very careful about quoting the Bible here because we've got 2 preachers in the room and they'll take me to task. But you know, the prodigal son, the story of the prodigal son, where you know the prodigal son returned home. He said, "I'd rather be a slave in my father's home than to be anywhere else." It's the idea that you get into a relationship with somebody that loves you and cares about you and is able to create an intimate space for you to survive and thrive. So it becomes very important. So the master-slave relationship, going in terms of your conscious development from one to the next, is very important. But yet you got to keep in mind that we all experience prosecutorial anxiety at some level. Prosecutorial anxiety, where we use things against each other. So one of the things that we use against me all of my life, and I'm being personal about it, as a young physician, they used the fact that I was a young doctor. As a young physician, they used the fact that I was a young doctor. Now that I'm an older doctor, they use that too against me. Now that I'm an older doctor, they use that too against me. So Throughout life, you
get
stuck against
frustrated. You know, what I
and at some point you get
do my
frustrated. You know, when I went to do my
they
fellowship
looked
at
at me askance. You know,
they looked at me askance. You know, they said,
early
"What are you
40s.
doing here?"
I was coming to do child and adolescent.
I was coming to do
and
child
they
and
knew that I
adolescent
had
Cedar Sinai,
been
and they knew that I
internal
had
medicine,
been
psychiatry, and all
credentialed
things.
in internal medicine,
And they looked at me,
psychiatry, and all
forensic
things.
psychiatry,
And they looked at me, you know, forensic psychiatry.
Personality problem.
Problem.
Truth of the matter is, I wanted to become a child and adolescent
Truth of the matter is, I wanted to become a child and adolescent
I was my next step. You know, I've always thought of myself as going through
I've always thought of myself
if you're a military
almost like a
officer,
military.
take on different assignments, and my next assignment
Take on different assignments, and my next assignment was to be a child.
So, and I just kept soldiering on.
And I just kept soldiering on.
It is important to keep in mind that we all experience power unto death. And we all experience it. People always bring drama to us, and we bring drama to us. Always. And the question is, how do you manage that? Now, one of the things that is very, very sad to see is what happened in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We're out in Sterling, I think his name is.
We're out in Sterling,
you know, selling CDs, trying to make a living, trying to support a family.
Trying to make a living.
Probably a felon, had a gun.
Probably
a 911 call went told that.
A 911 call went told that.
There was a van threatening somebody with a gun.
There was a van
threatening somebody with a gun. And cops rolled up on the scene. And they knew they had a free shot of this man. They know they could kill him. Based on posture anxiety. The idea that this guy had a lot of exposure where you could kill him and get away with it. So when they roll up on that scene, I know good police officers. I've worked with good police officers all my life. Good police officers talk. They understand the importance of language.
They understand the importance of language.
You roll up on a scene like that, you try to get control of the situation.
You try to get control of the situation.
You said, listen, man, there was a call. The reason we were here is you respond to the call. 911 called that there was a gun. 911 called that was brandished. And I don't know if you have that gun, but if you do, let's get the gun and let's solve this problem right now.
Let's get the gun and let's solve this problem right now. So we both can go away and take care of this.
Mr. What's your name, sir?
So, Mr.
I am Officer Schmidt, that's Officer.
I am Officer Schmidt, that's Officer.
Do you have a gun? Yes, it's in my right pocket.
Do you have a gun? Yes, it's
in my right pocket. What we want you to do is to get on your knees, put your hand on your head,
what we want you to do is to get on your knees, put your hand on your head, get on your knees,
and then we'll cuff you up and take the gun, then we'll take you to a station. Okay, then just run, and then we see. You know, if they had done that, if they had done that, going from a diatribe to a dialogue, that man would have been shot. Let's look at what actually happened. They rolled up on that scene within 2 minutes.
They rolled up on that scene within 2 minutes.
The first thing that I saw looking at that tape was they pushed him.
The first thing that I saw looking at that tape was they pushed him.
Could you imagine somebody coming to you and instead of talking with you, they push you, and instead of talking with you, they push you, drop you on the ground, and then drop you on the ground, and then pin you against the ground. You don't know what they're doing. And given the history of police officers in this country, and given the history of police officers in this country, and the history of police officers killing. So what happened was very telling. Both of them. So what happened was very telling. Both of them. What is the statistical implications of that? Both of them losing their body cameras. But yet there was some lady in a car videotaping this event. And what happened was that they saw this guy pinned to the ground. No gun in his hand. The officer decided to pull his gun out. The officer decided to pull his gun out, and those are the facts. That is prosecutorial anxiety. That is prosecutorial anxiety.
His chest and at the back.
And well, it was exit wounds. It was. Yeah, he was all on the ground. So he was 4 guns. So you look at that and you say, my God, what is happening here? You look at that and you say, my God, what is happening here? It's prosecutorial anxiety. Those cops knew that they could kill this man because one was black. There was an attached assumption of dangerousness to him, that they could get away with it. Okay? That's prosecutorial anxiety. The precedent anxiety was attached if they decided they were constitutional officers involved in maintaining community standards and in taking care of the public. But they decided they had a free shot at this black man. Why did the black man? Now, in terms of their evolving understanding of their power relationship, you go back to power unto death. In this culture, how does one begin to appreciate one's role in this process? How? You are informed by culture. You are informed by culture and by history. And in this country, The Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, when it was first initiated, empowered officers to go and hunt down black slaves. Then Plessy versus Ferguson. Separate but equal. The Black Code. Then in this country you had sundown towns where police officers were keeping blacks out of certain towns at a certain time. Okay? You had the end of Reconstruction and the Black Code. So police officers developed their sense of their own professional identity within this cultural milieu. So culture imposes meaning to language. So in our formulation, we talk of eidetic speech, we talk of eidetic speech. And those are kind of fancy terms, but it's really all about language and how do you understand language and the meaning of language and the assignment of value to people. Now again, keep in mind that intimacy is about assigning value to people. When they rolled up, when those officers rolled up to the black man, they did not value him. They did not value him. There was no need to be intimate with him. Language and intimacy. Now, one of the speeches that I want you to keep a look at, keep in mind, Obama's speech at the Dallas Memorial Services was brilliant. It was brilliant because I've been tracking Obama. I mean, this entire project here that I'm engaged in the past 8 years is I've got to write him a thank you card one of these days. His presidency has been exemplar in helping me understand so many things. So let's look at the issue of intimacy. And the idea of communicating. And the idea of communicating some very complex information. What was the most remarkable thing about Obama's speech?
I guess for me, is how he was able to navigate through the tense moment when you could literally see the crowd listening when he touched on Black Lives Matter. And then he explained what it means from a black person's point of view and what it means to be a police. And pointing out that it's important for persons, minorities, to understand what it means to be a cop approaching you and he implored also the cops to understand what it means to the minority persons approaching them home.
Roll. How would you compare Bush's speech to Obama's speech?
I think Obama had more skin in the game. One, because he had to deal with the situation on the ground and he was largely responsible for it. Bush, this happened in his neck of the woods, and he's a former president. Moreover, viscerally, the issue is about race, and he was the black president.
Okay, let me. I've been dealing with this stuff for many, many years, and as a psychiatrist, I've got a kind of a very different and a jaundiced view of what happened. I think Obama's speech was brilliant because he started with a joke. Let me repeat what I just said. Obama showed such high intelligence, such high intelligence. What do you call that intelligence? It's social intelligence.
Yeah.
He's now facing a very critical audience of police officers who've just been killed, and this man gets up there, and the first thing he does, he tells a joke. You remember what the joke was about?
Yes.
What was the joke about, Judith?
The chief loves Stevie Wonder, so does Michelle. So President Obama said, well, I'm glad I met Michelle first because she loves Stevie Wonder. He was implying that. had he not met her first, the chief would have gotten.
And what was the response of the audience?
Everyone was laughing.
Everyone was laughing. He had created an intimate space to talk about lots of very important things. You look at Bush's speech, there was not an intimate space.
I think there's no comparison between former President Bush's speech and President Obama's speech, because I think both speech complemented each other. Bush is known as more of a military person, and this is his hometown, but he is a farmer. So I think what I saw was dignity. He acknowledged that this is the present president, and he's the former, so he just gave a few words and then gave the platform to the present person.
Of course, you're right.
I want to say something. I want to say, when people are talking that Obama is president, he showed that he was president of all the people. And it really struck me because he touched on the police, he touched on black batters' lives, he touched on white America, he touched on everything. So he showed that he was president of all the people, even though he was a black man standing at the podium.
Right. You know, all this is important. Everything that you said is important. But what I want you to keep in mind is this. There's a difference between intimate speech, which leads to a dialogue and solutions to problems, and instrumental speech, which is not very intimate. And sometimes when you can engage in very linear, non-intimate speech, and you could leave someone feeling completely left out. When Obama opened up with a joke and everybody was laughing, he created an intimate space where he could talk about some very, very serious stuff. No, this is an old psychiatrist trick. You make them start laughing. Now, when I was an internist, I didn't have to make my patients laugh. I just came in there and I just said, "What do you need?" Blah, blah, blah. But as a psychiatrist, for people to open up to you, you have to create an intimate space where they're able to talk to you about a lot of different things. One of the things that you've got to keep in mind is that we had a number of questions here, Don. You helped me with this. So we talked about
prosecutorial anxiety.
No, we talked about, you know, I was trying to get the questions, but I have a different presentation here. But I actually modified this presentation, but I don't have the information. I had questions, and the question I asked you was, remember the question I asked you?
What is it when you're talking to someone and you realize that nothing that they're saying makes sense?
Right, and you said that you have experienced this.
I've experienced this.
Right, and that is called discursive nominalism.
A big word.
Discursive nominalism, I invented it. And I invented it to try to understand David Hume, who was an empiricist and a skeptic. And one of the interesting things about David Hume was that he started out in his conscious development, he actually had a phase in his life where he was a stoic, where he is able to accept everybody. He is able to accept all of the prosecutorial and the depressive anxiety. But at that level of stoicism, there's no intimacy. Now, when I present my lecture in Scotland, I'll talk about David Hume as someone who was he was just a crazy dude. He was lots of fun. He was a funny guy. And he understood that part of his power was that capacity to create an intimate space. And so he moved from stoicism to skepticism. Skepticism is huge. It's the fifth, in terms of Hegel's, hierarchy of conscious development. Skepticism is wonderful. Skepticism is wonderful because you're able to manage everybody's prosecutorial anxiety, your depressive anxiety, and also to have fun with it and to create an intimate space where people can reflect on what you're saying. Now, a moment ago we had a lot of discursive nominalism. Everybody had their own say-so of what they think this meant. And a lot of times, the way I came up with discursive nominalism, I was in San Francisco, one of my multiple trips. one of my Gulliver's travels, if you will.
Yes.
And I was in San Francisco, I was talking to this fellow, and we were talking about Anthony Davis. And we sat there for 10, 15 minutes talking about Anthony Davis. And then when he mentioned that Anthony Davis was 7 foot tall and was a great outside shoot, had a great outside shot, I said, we are not talking about the same dude. That was an example of discursive nominalism. And the truth of the matter is, a lot of times people engage in this. For example, Donald Trump does this quite a bit. And usually discursive nominalism has to, it reflects your loss. And so that's why you have to be very, as a psychiatrist, I listen to people all the time, because you have to listen to what people are saying, because what they're saying is not actually necessarily what they mean. A lot of times people come up with stuff that means nothing. They don't, it's an empty house. And so you have to give yourself a chance to figure out exactly what it is they're trying to say. And because a lot of times when people come up with stuff, it's about their loss. Rudy Giuliani. Black Lives Matter is racist. This is the man who could have easily have been described as a kind of a race pimp while he was mayor of New York City. He disparaged black folks to no end. And he doesn't acknowledge that black folks matter. There's a subtext to black folks matter. The subtext is black lives also matter. Black lives matter also matter. Black lives also matter. That's the subtext. It came about as a result of black men being executed in the streets for little or no good reason. And this is not something new. Diablo, New York City, a guy who was walking in his portico of his apartment with a key in his hand and was shot over 30 times. So this is nothing new to black folks. We've been experiencing this forever. And you can understand that the poor white cops who are constitutional officers are dealing with a history that they themselves don't even understand. Tens of thousands of towns in America were sundown towns. Tens of thousands. Glendora was a sundown town. Levitt in New York was a sundown town. That means that cops were empowered to tell people to get the hell out of town at a certain time. So blacks' lives didn't matter. And these poor guys engage in their procedural anxiety. What happened in South Charleston? This cop stopped this guy, this poor black guy who owed some back child support, decided to run, abandon his car. The cop decides that it's time, took his shot him, then went and tried to plant evidence. Unfortunately, somebody taped it. But he thought he could get away with that.
Killing someone.
Raul and I were in Bangor, Maine. we got okayed on our registration for a room. We showed up, but they had us like in the audience in Nanaga, but in the portico of the hotel for about 15, 20 minutes. I showed them on my telephone that I had a reservation. I paid. I showed them I had taken my money out of the account. Now the truth of the matter is, if you're a traveler, and they see this, people would accommodate you. They'd run your card and then give you a room and say, we will warrant later. We'll try to figure it out later. Within 5 minutes, that young lady who was the supervisor called security. She called security.
For what?
Because you were black. Because you were black, we do big black guys.
Representation of our government.
So when the officers came in there, I says, that's the money. Boy, it's wrong. So we were having fun, Governor LePage discourages black folks going to that city. He says, black guys always show up there, impregnate a couple of white girls, and he made some other stupid comments like that. So when I saw that, I told the security, I was just, man, I'm not D-Money, Curly or whatever. I'm actually a psychiatrist that came up here to enjoy the scenery of a beautiful part of the country. But they treated us very badly. They treated us very shabbily. And I knew why they were treating us shabbily, because we were black. There's no question about it. But black guys experience this all the time. And it's hard for me to explain it to people. And the only way I can explain it is by going back to Melanie Klein, going back to Hegel. Boy, that's a tough thing to do, to try to figure out your experiences by looking at a psychoanalyst from the 50s and 60s, but she was on money, man. She was on money. In any event, this presentation here is really about the book that we're trying to write. And it's very dense, as you noted, because it touches on a lot of areas. So my word cloud was going to be very helpful. In our word cloud, we talk about discursive nominalism, which is nonsense. People just talk stuff all the time. It doesn't mean anything. And people get caught up in it, and it's about their losses. I'm going to be the law and order president.
Saying nothing.
Mr. Trump.
Says nothing.
If he becomes president, there will be so many riots in this country, you'll be sad. You know. So, you know, people who are adults realize this. That you have, but you see a lot of people don't, people put too much, they attribute too much gravitas to very stupid people.
Is it possible, though, that Trump knows language and he understands how important it is? So in the case, for example, of what he did in the primaries, you can take what Adolf Hitler did in 1932 and 33. He used a textbook. What he's doing now, Nixon.
But what you're saying is what you're saying is important, because a lot of Americans are somewhat lazy. They fall back on prejudices, and they engage in discursive nominalism, which is, you know, this kind of meaningless talk that has no meaning. And the only solution to that is authenticity. Now, when I was an undergraduate at Northwestern, as a sophomore, we did a lot of reading about the French existentialists, and, you know, I stopped talking about the French existentialists when I became a senior, because, you know, it kind of dated you, and you felt kind of silly talking about bad faith and, you know, authentic speech and thought, you know, and you know, it's usually when you're trying to make a move on Saturday night, you bring up thought. So, but in any event, I began thinking about Jean-Paul Sartre again, and looking at authenticity and inauthentic speech, because I think it has value. And, you know, people always want to have some kind of a litmus test to look and to assess discursive nominalism. Because discursive nominalism is a type of speech: etic speech, eidostic speech, eidetic speech. And it has meaning. Let me see here. It's very dense. It's what I do, but discursive nominalization is etic speech. It's raw. It's unformed. It's uninformed. And etic speech goes on to become eidoctic speech when cultural meaning is assigned to it, and that's assigned by parents and culturation and culturalization. So your postural anxiety, where you're very destructive to certain people, is modified over the course of time by a master-slave relationship with somebody that's important to you, and then eventually you go on to develop some stoicism, which doesn't have a lot of intimacy attached to it. Then if you're lucky, Hume tells us, you know, you go on to develop a skeptic understanding of your losses and other people's losses, and you have fun with it. You try to create that intimate space with it. So it's important to understand that going to eidetic speech is about intimacy. It's about visualization of memories of past events, where you can then modify it like you would a movie and create that space, that intimate space for yourself and others. Language is about creating intimate spaces for each other and taking care of each other. And you know, Obama, God bless his soul, did it for me. And I sit there and I look at this man talk in the middle, in the start of a lecture or a memorial service. He started with a joke. I mean, that is just brilliant beyond brilliant. Because what he did there, he interjected intimacy into that space. And that intimacy gave him the ability to talk about some very, very tough issues. And one of the most important things he talked about is what Hegel would talk about, is the importance of state power. It keeps us all safe. One of the things that I never could understand about police officers, maybe we pay them too damn little. They don't understand the importance of their role.
They do, you know. It's just the minority which causes, because I can tell you.
I think it's cultural. I don't think they understand the importance of the role. So, for example, as a physician, as a young physician, I knew any old person walking into my emergency room on my service when I did internal medicine, I could kill them. They could easily die. If I had a bad night, they could be dead the next morning. And nobody will really question me because I know how to fix it up so that they can die without not worrying about it. But something, the culture that I came from would not permit that. Because as a physician, you have to go and deal with
transparency.
You have to go deal with professors and attending staff who are going to say, Dr. King, why did this man die on your watch? What did you do, and why did you do that, and when did you do it? So for me, nobody's going to die on my watch as a physician. It just would not happen because I had a relationship. I had a relationship with my professors who were involved in my training. I just didn't have prosecutorial anxiety which says, you can go and have lunch because this mofo can die on your watch. It doesn't really matter. It was not going to happen because I was not going to go to dinner. I was going to make sure I do everything I can to make sure that this patient is put in a place where they're going to be safe. So the next day, if he does die in the ICU or he dies here or there, the cop, so you did that. Well, I said, yeah, I knew he was having problems here, so I got him in the CCU. I knew he was having problems here, I got him here. I sat up by his bed all night long giving him medications, and I have. Because on my watch, nobody was going to die. You need to have the same kind of culture in the police force to understand the gravitas of your role. My role as a physician is over 2,000 years old, and I am proud to be a doctor. That same mindset should transform policing in this country, where they realize that they're constitutional officers with the power of life and death, and that when you're dealing with loss and grief, there are ways to overcome that. And part of it is creating a discussion which leads to creating intimate spaces where you can solve people's problems. And that's what is missing. This entire debate that's been ongoing in this country makes no sense to me because basically the fundamentals are not being considered. And guys like Giuliani and these folks are given power in their discursive nominalism where they're talking a bunch of nonsense, reflecting that their losses, loss of white power, white privilege, the ascendancy of a black president. It hurts a lot of white folks because 59% of white folks voted against Obama and he still became president twice. That is if that becomes important to you, there's nothing that you can do to convince them otherwise. As a matter of fact, when I created the Venn diagram and I tried to get it published, it was because people were engaging in kind of bargaining where they would not accept Obama. The story that made me think and go back and pull up Melanie Klein's work is that BBC had a news broadcast in early 2009 where this woman took to her bed, white woman took to her bed. She was depressed. She was profoundly depressed when Obama beat, I think it was McCain. And then she began listening to Fox News in her bed. And Fox News said, he's illegitimate. He was born in Kenya. And all of a sudden, she got life. And she sat up straight. And she says, I'm going to go join the Tea Party. And at that point, they began to engage in this kind of bargaining. This power unto death. This lack of acceptance of this man as president. Doing everything you can to damage him, to destroy him, to minimize him. Power unto death. Power unto death. And so that's how this entire process got started. It was all Obama's fault. But that is part of the deal. So let's move on. Discursive normalization. naming things. It's very, very important because it's a natural part of language development. It's a very natural part of language development, discursive normalization. And so sometimes when you hear little kids talk, they Mommy wants a cracker. Or they're saying very precociously, oh my God, how bright this little kid is. But it's discursive normalization. It means nothing because it's not informed by anything. Now, it may reflect your losses, it may reflect a lot of things, but it's changed. Discursive normalization initially about loss and grief and whatever, but then it eventually begins to have real value. It begins to have value when through your parents or through culturalization. Your etic speech becomes eidostic speech. And then eidostic speech becomes eidetic speech, where it can be visualized and take on those cultural and other types of meanings to it, okay? And so it becomes very important. So, examples of discursive normalization at the end of my thing, I said, I gave you the example of Anthony Davis, my experience, which was for me very funny.
You have a conversation.
The other thing that I love is, for example, you ever had a conversation with the average American sometimes about freedom. What does freedom mean to you? Well, some guys' freedom means sitting under the bridge with my AK-47 on my bag, and I don't want anybody to tell me what to do. That to them is freedom. Is that your freedom? I don't know. But in terms of discussion, that's their freedom. So freedom is one of those things that God knows you can make up the stuff as you go along. Shooting at black men, the idea that they're dangerous. This has come true to culture. We talked about the Second Amendment. We talked about the experience of post-Reconstruction. We talk about the civil rights decision, separate but equal. We talk about black codes. We talk about sundown towns. We talk about lynching. That's what went on in this country for years and years and years. One of the little nasty secrets that people don't realize is that the NRA and a lot of GOPs have been writing these conceal and carry laws and stand your ground laws to empower white citizens to acquire guns and to be able to use them to kill blacks and to get away with it on the color of authority of the law. That's Trayvon Martin. It didn't protect Castillo in Falcon Heights because he told a cop, I have a gun in my glove compartment and I have a permit. They still shot his arm off. What's up? Take a seat. Again, discursive normalization, you've got to be very careful because discursive normalization becomes meaningful when you begin to create intimacy in the language. But without that creation of that intimate space, it's just nonsense. Because people come up with all sorts of prejudicial statements about this, that, and the other, and there's no way you can deal with it. Black Lives Matter is racist. Really?
But to be a racist, though,
you have to have
power.
Well, that was one of the questions that so one of the second questions on you I asked the second question was power. The question was I can't remember because we don't have it here. How do you know you have power?
Well, from what I see, fear in Giuliani's eyes, I believe black people in America has power because that's fear. That's a white man fearing what a group, a bunch of young, sensible black people who are not, or who were not brainwashed, who actually see the truth can do. He knows what can happen. It's just that I wonder if these young people realize the power that they really have. Because to be attacked by a man like Giuliani, you're on his radar, he's afraid. He's really afraid.
Well, one of the things I love about David Hume David Hume, and like I said, you know, I really love the Scots. As a matter of fact, I've told you about my plans for becoming the essential and lost king of Scotland. You know, and that's because of David Hume, moral sentiment, Adam Smith, moral sentiment, Fairbairn talking about the importance of object relations and the importance of object uses as you develop your identity. Very important stuff. And we're going to be working on that. But skepticism and empiricism, David Hume, and discursive nominalization. Yes.
Staying within the framework you're presenting here tonight, and looking at language as important, language development and integration, and discursive nominalism. Nominalization. What is happening is that when someone say Black Life Matters, it's language. Black life matters. But what's beneath that is the idea that black life is and continues to be property. In a materialistic society where we seem to be expanding, it seems to be black lives don't have any value within this culture, this materialistic, financialized culture. So there was a time when black people were enslaved, when black people were literally property, owned largely by white men. And what is happening now is that out of that early formation, you see the social structures, the economic structures, the legacy of that is fully entrenched. And so when someone says black life matters, why doesn't white life matter?
You know, what is unstated? Eidetic speech is very interesting. It has certain cultural implications, okay? The truth of the matter is what is unstated in that statement, black lives, the statement is black lives also matters, because the assumption is that black lives don't matter. So when they say black lives matter, that's not what they're saying, that other lives don't matter. What they're saying, black lives also matters. Okay? And so you got to be very careful in getting into this kind of discursive nonsense, naming things and responding to guys like Giuliani, who is just an old guy who's stupid and who's past his time, and not giving him any kind of value to affect how you respond to him. He's engaging in inauthentic speech. His speech is inauthentic because it does not lead to a discussion which leads to any rational thought. He is inauthentic. He shows bad faith because he knows better. But knowing better doesn't mean that he acts in a better way. I love David Hume. David Hume, the great Scottish empiricist. It's interesting, he's an atheist. So in terms of Hegel's formulation, he never got to the sixth and the seventh stage on happy consciousness and rational consciousness. But David Hume went through a Stoic phase. Now let me quickly go through an example of what I'm talking about. When you started life in trying to establish your identity. So you engage in a lot of mastery, a lot of breaking things. You take things, you control them, you whatever. It's mastery. And that leads eventually to power unto death, where part of your mastery is I can kill you, I can destroy you. But the thing is, when you can say, it's the Oedipal complex, it's this, that, and the other. But I can destroy and kill, guess what? I can also destroy and kill you too, Baba. So there's a reciprocity there, and that forces you, in terms of your power identity, to go into a master-slave relationship where you develop a depressive relationship or depressive anxiety relationship with somebody else. So master-slave is a defense against prosecutorial anxiety.
How do you break down master-slave relationship?
A master-slave relationship is when you go and you cook curry for your husband. and you said, honey, I love you. I am your slave, you are my master.
No, he didn't.
and so he says, okay, I can live with that. And you know, the thing is, you wink and you nod at this stupid man because you know you have the power. Because basically you're playing him. Because the fourth stage of conscious development is called the stoic phase. Basically what you're doing is you're saying, I am going to play whatever role I need in order to get you to do what you got to do. So a lot of women say, you know, honey, here's the pot roast and potatoes, but make sure you get some sleep because you got to get up and work in the morning, right?
Yes,
I said, yes, baby. And so thanks for the meat and potatoes. I'm going to sleep now, and I'm going to go work for 10 hours, and I'm going to bring over my money and give you so you could be my wife. You could be my slave.
Who is actually?
Who is the slave? Who is the master? So that's the stoic level. You accept stuff, and it's all interlinked. It's not intimate, you know. And so David Hume didn't like that because basically that's playing somebody. It's not a very intimate space. You simply say, I'm your slave, you're my master, and I'm going to do everything to take care of you. David Hume was wonderful because he realized that he became a skeptic. He said, you doubt everything. You doubt all the relationships that people come up with. And so, you know, a skeptic would tell the guy, you know, who's saying, you know, well, you're my slave, I'm the master. She says, the wife says to the husband, you know, I know you're my master, I'm your slave. And, you know, unfortunately tonight we're going to be having Cajun catfish. It's burnt. I don't try to burn your food, you know, but it's just that it's Cajun tonight. And she says, and then she tells the husband, she says, but make sure that in the future, you know, you give me enough money so I can put on a better meal for you, so you can have some of that German fish that's not burnt. That's skepticism. You're dealing with prosecutorial anxiety, depressive anxiety, but you're having fun with it.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? You're having fun with it. You're playful.
Okay.
You're playful with it. You know, I was going to get very vulgar here. I'm not going to go.
Please don't.
But you know, this kind of stuff, this kind of game playing happens with people all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm going to be the master. You're going to be my slave. Then I'm going to be your slave. You be my master. And it's gamesmanship. It's discursive normalization. It's playful, and people are exploring spaces, intimate spaces where they can live their lives and feel valued and taken care of, and so forth and so on. So, David Hume was wonderful because he moved from Stoicism to skepticism, which was very wonderful. And so,
Mindfulness.
now, architect of mindfulness, again, language informs working memory. If you don't have memory by age 5, you can't develop intimate spaces. You can't manage your losses. You require other people to manage your losses. Language helps you to create a holding space. That holding space or holding environment becomes very important. That holding environment has three spaces attached to it. It has to have aesthetic, moral, and ethical spaces attached to it. Now, it's important to understand the importance of language. Language normalization means that you can name things and go back to identify what it is. When I talk to my patients about discursive normalization, I think in terms of a big, beautiful home being explored by a child. And the child is exploring that space, those spaces with a parent. And the kid is running through the house saying, Mom, what is this room called? This is a kitchen. Oh, great, great. What is this room called? It's a bedroom. Wow. And so the kid is running through the house. It doesn't mean anything to the kid. But the parent is there giving him access to the language and putting cultural meaning to it. He says, Mom, this is a bedroom. Can I also be a kitchen? Can I also cook? No, son. We don't do kitchen in the bedroom. You know, bedrooms are only for 3 activities. Really? You know, Okay, so I can't cook. I can't cook in the bedroom. No, you can't cook unless you're very good. My best stuff, man, goes. Anyway. You see what I'm saying? So normalization, discursive normalization, you run through the house, you're naming things. And then you go back and you explore those spaces when it makes sense to you. So if you're interested in music, you go back to the salon where there's a piano, and you begin to talk about the piano in that salon. You know, and that salon begins to take on language, and you begin to add intimate spaces surrounding that piano. You begin to take on intimate spaces surrounding the bedroom. You begin to take on intimate spaces regarding different things. And so your discursive normalization go from etic speech to eidostic speech to eidetic speech. And so you begin to visualize what it's like to be in a bedroom. Oh man, to be in a bedroom. You can use a lot of stuff in the bedroom. You can use your memory, what we can do in the bedroom, what can't we do in the bedroom. And that is what eidetic memory is about. Cook, yeah. So that's the important. So intimacy is about elaborating language and being able to name things and to name them properly. And so you usually need a parent there with you to identify the space and to give cultural meaning to it, you know, and to understand what it's all about. So if Trump, if not Trump, but if Giuliani was truly authentic, he would say, you know, black lives do matter. Of course, you know, that's what Obama said. Not only do black lives matter, but so do blue lives. After he made that statement, conservatives still criticize him. When he made that statement in Warsaw, Obama said black lives matter, but so do blue lives. But the knee-jerk response to a lot of conservatives was, you know, he's a great divider. No, he didn't. You weren't listening to what he was saying. He was authentic. You are being inauthentic because you don't want to go to a place of a discussion where you can solve problems. What you want to do is to go to a place of diatribe where you can damage people and limit them. Thank you, Jay. So we are talking. I'm trying to come to the end of this lecture. The importance of the architect of mindfulness. Language becomes very important. Making lists and keeping lists and creating hierarchy of needs and so forth becomes very important. Intimacy is very important because it helps you with relationships. Out of relationships comes intimacy and a sense of your own value. When people take care of you, people do things for you, it becomes very important. And it starts with discursive normalization, where you begin to explore the spaces, then you begin to name the spaces, and then the spaces begin to take on an intimacy based on how you identify those spaces. So practicing allows you to explore those spaces, those intimate spaces. The relationships you develop along the way help you to create an intimate space where you begin to have value, vitality, and meaning to your life and the life of other people in your life. Aesthetic intimacy is very important because aesthetic intimacy establishes relationships with other people and gives you a chance to form truly intimate relationships with other people, to create a holy environment where you can thrive. That holy environment informs choices, and the choices helps you to reproduce those intimate spaces for you, not only for yourself but for others. Intimacy eventually leads to love. And that eventually leads to creation and value, and so forth. And again, you know, keep in mind, I mean, our entire program is about the essential architecture of laws and groups. We talk about the importance of choice as the intellectual representation of freedom, which is God's greatest gift to us. Choice. Even the choice to say that God is dead is a choice. And that's one of the things that I truly, truly love about the great philosophers like Nietzsche and others, you know, when they said things like that, because they understood that the greatest gift that God has given us is the freedom of choice to become better, to become kinder, and the importance of moral sentiment in all of this becomes very important. That's why I love the Scots, because they are the first people that begin to talk about this stuff, the moral sentiment, the importance of moral sentiment. the importance of doing the right thing, the importance of being kind, the importance of creating an intimate space for your fellow man to take care of them. Very important. Now, one of the most important things that I think that came from Obama's speech, and I want to emphasize it here, two things. His comments about Stevie Wonder was wonderful because it just shows the man's high social intelligence. The second part that I really love is the importance of the states, to create that space for everybody to be safe and to thrive. And the guardians of that space are police officers. And it just hurts me to think that they don't understand their role. And when they see things that happen in Baton Rouge, and that begins to be the representation of what police power is about, it is horrible. But at the end of the day, you have to keep in mind that police power is very important, keeping us all safe, and police have to be respected. All lives matter. Black lives matter, so do blue lives. And what is needed here is for the cops to understand the task that they were given and how they've evolved and identified their professional interests and how other people have affected them in terms of that. You know, as a doctor, this is an aside, as a doctor, one of the things that I learned very early in my career is the importance of being nice, the importance of being intimate. Because when you're nice to people, they give you information, they protect you, they give you things to make your job easier. The whole idea of showing up to work and being nasty to people is crazy to me, because it makes your life a lot harder. I mean, being nice is the easiest thing you can give somebody. And you know, I don't know how I got there, but I got there through culture where I came from, my mom, my dad, my church, the people that I've admired in my life.
Much easier to do.
What's that?
Be nice and to put all that in.
Oh, it's so much easier. So much easier.
Much easier to do.
Anyway, the floor is open. Questions, concerns, opinions. What do you think? You've been here a couple of times. You should have a voice. What do you think? You're not ready. Okay, cool. I'm not gonna. So, any thoughts?
I'm still working on prosecutorial anxiety versus depressive anxiety. And what exactly is prosecutorial anxiety?
Let me tell you the story I tell my patients. Okay? You're walking in the wilds one day, right? And you see a big tiger coming at you. The tiger has big jaws and he's going to eat you. You feel anxiety. That is prosecutorial anxiety. You're going to be destroyed. You're going to be damaged. Nothing you can do about it.
So that's what the police feel when they see black men?
No, it's more complex than that. It's more complex than that because it's more complex than that. But that's prosecutorial anxiety. Okay. And so depressive anxiety is when you say, "Okay, I'm feeling this fear of this lion eating me." Depressive anxiety says, I'm going to run back to my community, my safe place where there are people there. There's relationships. There are relationships with the police, with my parents, with other people that can support me. That's depressive anxiety. So, a lot of times, because people have very disturbed relationships with important primary caregivers in their lives, they're, for a moment, stuck with the prosecutorial anxiety. A lot of people make a decision where they can't go back to a clearing where there's a home and family. They said that either they're going to go and attack the lion, and I don't care if the lion eats me, but I'm going to just take a chunk out of it. And so a lot of times people can respond that way. So they bring their own prosecutorial anxiety against the lion. You may kill me, but I'm going to bleed all over you, man. You know, and if you try to do, I'm going to pull out your teeth, I'm going to do this to you, I'm going to do that to you. Okay? So that is the response to prosecutorial anxiety. There's only two responses to prosecutor anxiety, which is depressive anxiety, assuming the anxiety that goes with being part of a family, friends, community, or you engage in what is termed manic defense. A manic defense, you say, bring it on. I'll take you on. Right. And so one of the things that I love Tupac Shakur, you know, and I call him all the time, you know, and one of the things he said, you know, he was struggling with prosecutorial anxiety until he had that tug-like pat on his chest. That is that sense that, you know, I take on the world, man. You mess with me, I'll mess back with you. You bring death to me, I'll bring death back to you. And so basically he was engaging in a manic defense. He did not see, and one of the songs that he says, you know, nobody loves me because I'm a nigga thug. So I'll take it on. You know, I'll just take it on. I may die, but nobody loves me, I'm a nigga thug.
Sad.
That's what that's the song. That's exactly what manic defense, and so many black guys do that. They take it on and they just do whatever they have to do.
But doesn't that say that the family structure in black people's lives need to be stronger?
That sounds like a discursive normalization. Black people's lives? Which black people are you talking about?
I cannot speak of another race. I'm
having fun with you. Because what you're saying is too all-inclusive.
No, but I did that deliberately. Just like how when we speak of the police, we have to say some. We have to always add some. Because for me, I understand the side of law enforcement very well. Having been an officer for 11 years, I fully understand how an officer feels in approaching a car. No,
you were a police officer in Jamaica?
Yes, for 11 years. So I fully understand.
With a big gun.
How they feel. Yet I've never faced racism in any way, shape, or form. So it's kind of hard in understanding. I'm from Jamaica.
Different place.
Exactly. So it's hard because when I approach officers here or when we're approached by them, I've never felt any sense of fear. For me, it's just we know what to do.
You're like a dog walking across the highway. You don't know where you're at.
You don't know where you're at.
Being polite, they've been polite to us, do what they're doing in life.
Most of them are polite.
That's what I'm saying. You have a
99.9%.
I've had that 1% come into my house where I felt fearful because they were rude. Okay, they were dismissive. And I felt fear. And when they told me they were coming back,
I've had that happen.
But that's why
we have to always use the word some, because we cannot generalize and just say, okay.
But almost that's the only thing is that being here, because the thing is when you grow up in the Inland Empire, it's actually very diverse. But where I'm working in Irvine, a predominantly white and Asian culture, I mean, I've been pulled over, and I mean, some of them can be very, very rude and aggressive, even if they have no reason to pull you over, simply because of the vehicle you're in. There's not a person of color that I've met that hasn't had a negative interaction with law enforcement. So, and that's Hispanic and Black. And I've been in those situations where we've been pulled over. There have been no ticket. There's been a search. They've asked for receipts for things in my car simply because it matched the way another car looked. They searched the car, and they said, well, where were you 30 minutes ago? There was a car that looked like this one that robbed this, and I said, okay. Well, they looked at the car, they saw the bags, they saw the receipts, and then they proceeded to run my boyfriend's ID to see if they could find something else. So I mean, no, and unfortunately for me, I've had several interactions with the police. I mean, I've never been arrested. I've never had anything. I've had situations where I was standing on the corner, and every time I get pulled over, I call my mom. I call mommy immediately, and I let her know where I'm at, that I've been pulled over, before they even get to the car. because that's just something
and they
I
like
do.
to ask the question,
No,
are you on parole or probation?
They do. They ask you that.
assume that black people are on parole or probation. And then once you answer that question, they're running it to see if...
They're establishing, I'm not making any excuses.
Do they ask Caucasians, are you on parole or probation?
Some, depending on the look. If they look hippie, they do. But they're establishing the threat level. That's what they're doing, because if you have been a violent offender, their approach to you or the threat level is higher. So if you've not been arrested or on probation or something to do with the law,
as I said before,
it's likely that the threat level diminishes.
It's only 1% of those police officers. Most of them, they'll give you a ticket, you go about your business. You handle, they don't even ask parole, probation.
No.
Do you have your license and registration?
Or do you know why you've been pulled over today?
Do you have your license, registration, and insurance?
You know,
and you move on from there. And no problem.
Yeah,
that one person who intimidated me made me fear all of them, because I don't know what that interaction is going to be. I'm fearful for my son. I'm fearful for my husband. And that's the way it is.
But that's
you don't know which police officer. My 14-year-old stepson and Denise and my other daughter and a friend went to church.
Oh yeah, and then he had his gun drawn on me. Oh, I remember.
They came out from Bible study.
That's where we were leaving. And
coming from Sunrise Church, came out of the gate, and the police car rolled up on
guy
them.
with his gun drawn. He had his gun drawn still. I had my hands out of the window.
Kids.
I stepped out and I was wearing a tight-fitting outfit, and I said, "You can see I have absolutely no weapons. Can you put your gun down?" I asked him several times, and he still didn't do it.
No, but the thing is,
but I mean,
with
how do you validate from church?
No, it doesn't matter where you're coming from.
No, they said that there were complaints in the area that there were gangbangers.
Different types of weapons can be stored in various places.
Oh, don't validate their behavior.
No, but
you cannot.
No, it's not validating. It is a fact.
There is no reason for it. There is no reason for it. They're not in the place for it. There is no reason for it. They have run the place. They have pulled you over. They have evaluated the situation. They see that these are teenagers. They see that it's by the church. There's no reason for them to pull out a gun instantly. It's too easy for someone to make an accident and pull a trigger accidentally.
And the officer was really
fearful of their life.
That's why when you say when you talk about anxiety, I feel like he was anxious when he was there because it was several of us.
What has to change is the laws that govern the state, because the law gives them the authority to search you wherever.
State power. It always
so they are not doing anything outside of the parameters of the law.
The problem is they do not treat everyone the same. The problem becomes when my black kids are there sitting on a curb with a guy with a gun, and the other white kids are going about their business. They came from the same place. They look the same way. Only difference is that my black kids were there and are sitting on the curb, and those white kids are going along their merry way. The difference between a young white kid stealing a piece of candy in the store and being told, "Dad, don't do it anymore," and another black kid being photographed and his picture being put on a wall. These are the differences that happen. They treat people differently.
And that
is the problem. Not that they don't have they all have the same rights, but people choose to treat different people different ways, and that makes it unacceptable. If there was a blanket level of that you're going to routinely treat everyone the same way, no, but they're not.
There's just a huge disparity
but then
as far as their interaction with different types of, I mean, it's been proven there wouldn't be
representatives
so I want
to
Jay,
the laws.
Do any of this on tape?
All of it.
Okay. One of the things you got to keep in mind in this program called Civil Groups Program, one of the things that we developed very early, we have a table where we have shields. If you look at the program, and this is a semiotic meaning to having shields. Shields protect you. I don't know if you understand the cultural implication of a soldier having a shield. A soldier in an army formation, a shield was very important.
And so you have to realize what your shields are in this culture. And so basically, when we created our website, we have a table with a series of shields and also a choice of the Anger Management Communication Solutions logo. The shields you can see. Anger Management Communication Solutions you can't see. It's an educational model. One of the things I gotta let you know is that when I worked a lot with cops, LAPD for the most part, over several years. And one of the cops told me, you got to learn how to engage in happy horse shit talk. That's his term, happy horse shit talk. And this was a good cop. And he made a habit of engaging in happy horse shit talk. What happy horse shit talk was intimate space, because intimate space gives you a chance to figure out exactly where you're going. People who are dangerous don't engage in happy horse shit talk, because they go strict from it's a threat level evaluation, as Joey talked about, threat level. So when you roll up on somebody, and I've done just the reverse. And I've been stopped by cops, and the guy came in, he's a young guy, and he's very, I say, Officer Schmidt, good seeing you, man. How are you doing tonight? You know, what do you think of tonight? It's kind of cold out there, huh? And so all of a sudden, I'm not really scared of him, and he says, this nigger's talking to me. What am I going to do with this? You know, and I'm saying, you know, I'm doing OP. How you doing, Officer Schmidt? That's nice. You know, you look like an Officer Schmitty. Is you related to him? Cops who are anxious and scared don't like that conversation. They want to get rid of you as fast as possible. You let it go. Especially if they're anxious. Now, if you run into a cop who's smart, who understands happy horse shit talk, they could talk it to you. But the anxious, wiry cop, he said, do you know this? Oh, yeah. Oh, man, da. So where are you going? Well, I'm going to, you know, I don't really know where I'm going. Do you know, I'm trying to find a Burger King. Do you know where I can find a Burger King? Okay, all of a sudden the cop's eyes were, what am I going to do with this mofo? Yeah. That's called happy horse shit talk. It's intimate talk, because it's all over the place. It's not, why you stop me, man? What do you hate against me, man? That's linear. Yeah. Whereas intimate talk is all over the place. You have a brother, Schmitty? Where can I find a Burger King around here? All of a sudden, they don't want to have an intimate space with you, but they begin to feel it. Yeah. I said, what are you doing here, man? Well, I don't know. I'm kind of confused myself, but you know something? I'm trying to get to the supermarket because I got to get there before a certain time because I want to get some stamps because I got a letter to mail out. Intimate talk. Yeah. A friend told me once she had a friend who got shot in San Francisco because a criminal rolled up on this kid, right? Handsome guy, you know, he's elegant. And the guy says, give me your money. And the guy says, oh, here, man. What do you want next? And he said, yeah, I want all your money, man. And the guy said, okay, you know, you probably need it. Yeah. And he's a handsome guy. You know what the guy did? The guy turned around and shot him in his head. Hey, you pretty motherfucker. Boom. Let's see how pretty you are now, motherfucker. And left. So I've been thinking, how do you manage that situation? Guy rolls up to me and says, hey, man, give me money. I said, listen, man, I've done it. I said, you can have it, but all I got is $10. I'm hungry. You know, I need my, if you can, let me keep my driver's license because I don't want to go to DMV. All of a sudden, the conversation is not linear. It's intimate. I need $10 for food to eat. I need my license because I don't want to go to DMV tomorrow. So the guy, all of a sudden, he identifies with me, and he says, okay, man, here's the money. Bye. So the difference between an intimate space and a non-intimate space.
becomes very important. It doesn't mean you're going to solve your, it's like a shield. Shield won't protect you from everything. Anger management, communication solution, knowing where you are in the diatribal versus discussion piece versus discourse and intimate piece doesn't always do it. But you have to recognize where you are in the communication cycle and take advantage of it. Again, we in our presentation we talk about the importance of diatribes, loss. You don't solve anything during a diatribe. You got to move your diatribe to a discussion where you can begin to list. You begin to nominally. You begin to list the things that are important to you, and even there you don't solve a problem. You begin to solve a problem. You begin to get into a discussion. Why is the discussion important? Because the discussion is about creating an intimate space with the other person. This is what I need from you, man. Can you give me my license because I don't want to go to DMV tomorrow, man? You know, if you can even gesticulate like this, you know, for sure, man. You know, please. You know what I mean?
You know, Aubrey, I'm sitting here, I'm thinking at a different level and how fabulous this work is. This work is very significant. For maybe the last 25 to 30 years, we've had something called community policing. And out of that, we've gotten best practices around community policing. So it seems to me what you've developed is a whole different paradigm that has applicability to these social problems we have right now. So you talk about aesthetic intimacy. I would venture to guess that within community policing, the term aesthetic intimacy is not being used.
No, it's not.
You talk about communication cycles and the police officer understanding the communication cycles. What if we were to explain community policing as best practices and integrate an understanding of, an appreciation of the communication cycle and helping the police officer to understand the different levels of conscious integration? If we can take these 7 steps or 7 levels of conscious integration and plug it in, apply it to the existing paradigm of community policing, we might have a different outcome. I think that outcome is necessary because community policing was put in place at the same time in the 80s that we, from a policy standpoint, made a decision that government was going to be submerged, that we weren't going to give people things any longer above the table, we would give it to them under the table, because we wanted to diminish the role of government, and we wanted to move towards a different model. That different model has run its course. So when that chief of police in Dallas said, we're asking the police to do too much, it is that the submerged economy or the submerged government has run its course. And that we have to bring all the goodies that people are getting and put it on the table so that we can address some of the things that Obama was talking about. We make a conscious effort to not fund mental health. We make a conscious effort to allow communities, the educational system to not be adequate. We constantly do that because we know how the system is set up, that through the tax codes, for example, through real estate tax codes, property values, determine educational outcomes. What your zip code determines educational outcomes. And that is linked to the submerged government. So ever since the 80s, late 70s and 80s, we've been asking police officers to do much more above the table when the government and the goodies are being distributed under the table.
Well, one of the things that I started out with this lecture is something called discursive nominalization. And when I talk about aesthetic intimacy, a lot of people don't know what the hell that is. That's a discursive nominalism. And it only becomes meaningful through interaction and through what we do on our webpage, through our video blogs and our various different things, and through this lecture series here. For me, that's me. I give you an example. if you talk to most Americans, left, right, a Chamber of Commerce, one of the big buzz things they talk about now is the Trans-Pacific TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership. The Trans-Pacific Partnership is America's industrial response to the hegemonistic moves of the Chinese. And for our business to be able to compete in China, in those markets, we need to create that kind of partnership. Now, part of the discussion that never goes forward from the Chamber of Commerce and the Republicans is that the Republicans and those people have had a concerted effort to kick the shit out of American labor for years. They've transported the jobs overseas. They've destroyed millions of jobs in America. And that part of the conversation that should be taken up is never taken up. TPP is necessary, but so is creating American standards for labor and labor integration and the labor movement. You can't do what Governor Walker is doing in Wisconsin and kicking the shit out of the labor unions or making them the enemies of the entire industrial process. Because that's not going to go forward, man. When Mitt Romney takes a company and moves it en masse to China and displaces American workers, who now you have an old guy, 50, can't find a job, that is immoral. And I don't know that right now the response is going to be governmental per se. Hegel understood that governance is very important. And we've talked about this role. We've had this discussion before. And you know what my opinion is? My opinion is that poor people need banks of their own, so they can get some of that quantitative easing. And they have to make decisions to bank and to deal with people who are going to take care of themselves. It's the only response to globalization.
And to follow on to that point, if you look at banks and the role of banks, finance, that's where most of the output, in terms of national output or global output, is. It's not in producing things; it's in financing and financial arrangements. And so, if you depend on a wage to be equal to how much you produce, your wage is going to stagnate, and the data suggests that.
Yeah.
So what has to happen, and I'm following your point about banks and the importance of banks for poor people, is that they have to have a stake in the global financial arrangement.
Right. People begin to have to act intentionally in support of their own financial interests. There's a statement which, we've talked about it before, the movie Chirac. Wonderful movie, very entertaining. But the solution that Spike Lee came up with, where Fortune 500 companies come and invest in the city of America, was such laughable bullshit. Because it's never going to happen. And so,
invest in what?
If you look at that movie, the end of the movie, these Fortune 500 companies that will come and invest in these communities, ain't going to happen.
I got news for you. It has already happened. It's been going on for about 20 years.
And it's been very successful.
It's just that we don't know it.
And it's been very successful. Let's have some sandwiches, man. Let's go ahead and eat.
Yes, food.
And we can keep talking.
Aubrey, you have to remember what happened in this. What happened?
Yeah.